we're going to talk a little bit about the class action lawsuit today and the advantage that it creates for so many of us and how we're dealing with it. I have a question for all of you, though, and here's the first question. And I want everybody to go into your chat, and I want you to answer in one word how you would describe or feel about your future in real estate. What is the word that best describes your outlook? Okay, and I love the honest answers. Fluid, exciting, bright, shaky, uncertain, I think is real, challenging, optimistic, hopeful, insecure. Savannah, that's a good, I think these words, unbelievable, Mike, come on, that's old school. Unbelievable. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, it's just unbelievable. But if you say it with enough enthusiasm, everybody will believe it's good. Isn't that right?
Correctamundo.
Who did that? Was that the Zig Ziglar or Tom Hopkins? It was one of the old
Tom
school
Hopkins.
Tom Hopkins. I love that. That was one of the first sales books I ever read in high school was How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. One of my favorites. I still quote it.
6 times read.
Yeah, 6 times. I've read it at least that many times. That's really cool. Successful Francis says, all right, let me see what else we got here. Optimistic, insecure, hopeful. For the most part, I think most people are optimistic. There's a lot of people that are just unsure. I think unsure is a good word. What happens when people feel uncertain? What happens, or what's the physical response to the emotional feeling? Mike says they shut down. Scared, they get anxious. It's fight or flight, right? It's either, I've talked to a lot of people. Matter of fact, I was on a call earlier today with a board of realtors, and I won't tell you what state. Talking about the problems that they have, and it's the low producers staying in the business, and they're worried about their people that are doing 5 to 10 transactions a year, and how do they even stay in business because they don't know, they don't have the skills to compete at a higher level, which is kind of interesting. Brian says worry or anxious scarcity. Yeah, a lot of people shut down. I think that when you don't know what to do, doing nothing is the natural response. So when you have uncertainty, it creates inaction. And when uncertainty happens and we have inaction, we don't get any result from that. And so that gives us an opportunity. And what I want to talk about today is opportunities. When other people are feeling uncertain and they feel like they don't know what to do, or they're anxious and they're concerned, it gives us the ability to come in and capture market share and to actually grow, because the consumer is feeling the same thing. Agents are reflecting what the consumer is feeling in the marketplace. They have a class action lawsuit going on. You've got high interest rates. You've got a polarized democracy where the right and the left are just, it's no longer about finding common ground. If you're on one side or the other, we hate you. And with all of the stuff that's going on in our world, people just don't know what to do. And so what they do as a result of that is they pull back and they just pause. And when they push the pause button, inaction happens. And so our job isn't as realtors to go out and convince people they should buy or sell a house. Like, those life events that occur are going to happen regardless of us. What we have to be is really good at understanding and asking better questions so that we can provide them with the best information to help them make the decision of what's best for their family, not make it for them or talk them into doing something that isn't the best thing for them. And that's really, I think, what I think that's the best thing we can do as we elevate our industry, is we become better at finding out what the client really needs and then just giving them choices. Here's a few things we need to understand about the settlement. I'll just talk to you about this. And if there's something you understand differently, throw it out there. But the changes required in the settlement and the proposed timeline, when are things happening? Most boards of realtors and big companies are making changes right now because they take place mid-August. And so they're trying to make their changes in July so that there's not a big shift that happens in August. Assumptions you should avoid. Like, what are some of the things we should avoid? Like assuming who's going to pay the commission if your buyer doesn't have the money to do it. Simple scripting and settlement related objections. These are things that you should be able to have great scripted responses when people have questions about the class action lawsuit. And the number 4 thing is creative compensation strategies. We have to be better at finding ways to get paid, and we have to be able to articulate that and communicate that early in the process. I'm going to say right now that if you're waiting to find out whether or not the seller is going to offer commission or pay commission, and you're representing the buyer, you're doing it wrong. You should know before you ever show that first house how you're going to get paid, regardless of what the seller says or does. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. Number 5 is there's 5 areas of skill development that we need for long-term success. And so there's 5 specific areas that we need to develop our skills. Christy and others that are in Workman as coaches or clients realize that we do a lot of skills development. How do we help you with the skills to be able to communicate differently? So systematically uncovering client needs, having compelling conversations around compensation. They shouldn't be confrontational at all. Celebrating objections. When someone gives you an objection, you're like, yeah, give me another one. I love that. How do you benefit? How do you benefit selling value, and how do you really build value when you sit down with a client? And then delivering services with transparency. And then we'll talk about building your pipeline with people who know, like, and trust you because they see you as an expert. How many of you have ever had people in your database use somebody else to buy or sell a house, even though they know you do it? Christy, is that frustrating? It's because they see you differently than you see yourself. And we haven't communicated to them that, number 1, we're experts. And number 2, we want the business. We just assume that because we're connected and we have fun together on Thursday night, that they're going to use us. And the opposite of that is actually true. They sometimes don't feel like, because they see you in social environments, that you have the expertise or the skills to be able to help navigate this complex market. So we'll talk about that. So we want people in there. This is probably one of the most important things that we communicate to everybody right now is that commissions, as they always have been, are what? Yeah, they're just negotiable. Everything's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. The sales price of a house is negotiable. The commissions are negotiable. Any rates that we talk about on this call or anything I talk about are for example purposes. You do whatever you want to. Everything's negotiable. I say that in every, we have to have full disclosure on everything we talk about because you don't ever want to be set up as steering anymore. So it's careful that we do it the right way. The other thing is before you present anything, if you're going to present something to a consumer that's creative or different or new, you need to make sure you get your brokerage approval, your broker owner, and your and legal approval. If you're doing things with your legal documents and you're not sure whether or not they're legal, make sure you get legal advice. It's important that you understand that I'm not the attorney in this relationship. I'm just giving you ideas and options, and you can choose to implement or not implement whatever you feel you like. So let's talk about the advantages. How many of you think of the class action lawsuit as an advantage? How many of you think of like, oh, you know what? I'm glad they're doing this. It's going to be an advantage to me. Does anybody have that personal thought? Nobody? Blanca says, yeah. Jennifer says, absolutely. Okay, so I love challenges and I love threats, because if there weren't any challenges and there weren't any threats in the marketplace, we wouldn't have an opportunity to show how good we are. The reason that there's a perception in the marketplace that realtors get overpaid for what they do is because such a large chunk of realtors aren't skills-based. They are opportunity-based. They sell a house because in the right place at the right time with the 3 or 4 people a year they know that will use them, and they oftentimes do whatever they have to do from a commissions perspective to get the business, but they don't have the skills. So what happens when there's a threat in the marketplace or when there's challenges, whether it's 2008 or whether it's the pandemic, the skills-based agents actually create a bigger gap between them and the average agent. So I love threats and I love objections and I love challenges because it allows our agents who are skills-based to continue to elevate and separate themselves from the average realtor who doesn't do enough transactions to be great at it. And so I'm hoping that I'm talking to all my skills-based agents. The reason you're on the call is because you either believe that or you want to develop better skills. So let's talk about the advantages. Mike put this in the chat just as I put it on my number 1. Look at my number 1 is Mike. The agent count should decrease. I think that with the challenges in the marketplace, there's going to be a lot of realtors who just don't want to do it. They don't want to have to go through the hard process of convincing a buyer how they get paid. And they've made their money off first-time home buyers in the easy business. Now they can't. We're already seeing a decrease in membership. When NAR goes to renew, the renewal cycle that happens this fall, it's going to be really interesting to see what the decrease in percentage is. And I think it's going to be significant, probably more than we anticipate. Agents with the skills are going to easily win over agents that don't have the skills. Agents are going to work with more serious prospects. In the past, how many times have you had buyers that drive you around and they were never really intent on buying a house? And you spent hours with them showing properties and looking at, sometimes even sign buyer agreements. But now it's going to be, because we have a serious conversation about compensation up front and we do buyer agreements for you inside houses, we're going to eliminate the looky-loos, the people that are just out there to waste your time. And so that means you're going to spend less time to have more closings, where it used to take 8 clients to get a closing. Now maybe you can do it with 3. And so you'll work with fewer people, but you'll have a higher percent that actually transact, because you're going to weed them out. And we get better quality prospects at showings because they don't want to look at the house if they have to sign a contract or agreement to get access to it. And if they're just looky-loos. So you're going to see a lot of advantages. That means we spend less time to close deals. Nice, not so serious buyers who won't sign an agreement are going to have to attend open houses to see properties. I love that. And I think that that's going to drive more attendance up in our open houses and give you more opportunities to convert buyers that are unrepresented. Because that's the only way they can get in the house, is to come and do an open house or with a represented agent. There's going to be more opportunities for agents to actually earn more money. I don't know how many of you have thought about this, that with the class action lawsuit, you can be more creative with your compensation, and and you could actually charge more, not less, for the services you provide. How cool would that be? Roberta, what do you think about that? Like, have you thought, maybe I'll just charge more? Like, there's no set number and everything's negotiable. Why does it have to be negotiated down? Why can't you go up from what your standard has been over the past? Like I remember we used to teach, Brent, remember we used to teach a 6, a 7, and an 8% listing presentation? We had a 6, a 7, and an 8. The gold standard was the 8%. And what we ended up doing is ended up negotiating and giving them all the services in the 8 for 7. And as a result of that, we ended up increasing the average amount of money we made when we listed properties. So by having creativity happen and giving more services on an a la carte basis, it gives you some options. There's going to be opportunities for agents to earn more. You're going to have real conversations about agency. They're going to happen naturally. It's not going to be awkward anymore. The client's going to have better understanding of how everybody gets paid in the transaction. There's not going to be this moment at the closing where they look at the settlement statement and they go, "You made what for what? You didn't even do anything." Don't you hate that when they're looking through their settlement statement and you didn't really earn the money you're getting paid? Now you can set that expectation early in the beginning, and then you do all those things. And when they see it, they go, "Oh yeah, I expected that." Like it's not a big deal. So, and then increased public perception of the realtor's value. Great agents are going to provide great value, and the consumer's going to see greater level of appreciation. I think that we're going to move from a opportunity-based realtor to a skills-based realtor, and the perception will be less like a car salesperson and more like a financial advisor. And didn't that feel better? Don't you want to be in the financial advisor realm, not the used car salesperson? And I have nothing against used car salespeople, but that whole business has changed as well, and everybody's doing all their buying online, and the dealerships are trying to figure out how to still compensate their salespeople when everyone's just going online, because they don't want to deal with the hassle of having to negotiate or be talked into something they don't want to do. And if we listen to what the consumer's saying, it changes our behavior in the process. So the consumer's telling us how they want to be treated. We just haven't been listening very well. I love the kitchen conversation. This is where our money is going to be made, ladies and gentlemen. Where we make our money is not going to happen when we show houses. It's going to happen at the kitchen table when we sit down and have a discussion about what their needs are, and then the options that we provide them to really communicate our value. That's where our money is going to be made. It's going to be made before we ever show the first house. Just like a listing presentation, the money's made when you get a listing presentation signed. It's the process of them convincing them and then you executing on the promises you made while you sat there. By the way, can I ask who really pays the commission and who's always paid the commission? Interesting question, huh? Everybody's smiling at me. Like who pays it? Like who's always paid the commission? we've always told, even in my own scripts, we used to say, hey, I represent the buyer's agent, but it's okay because the seller pays the commission. That was always not true because the seller doesn't come to the closing with any money. The only one that comes to the closing with money is the buyer. They're the ones that are buying the property, whether it's an increased sales price or whether it's on their down payment or whatever. The buyer's the only one coming to the closing. The buyers always paid the commission. So it's interesting that we always kind of did, I won't say deceitful selling because I don't think that's what we did. The way that it was structured is it was put into the listing agreement that part of the list price would compensate the buyer's agent. But we never said that means the buyer's paying it. We never finished the sentence by saying that means the buyer is actually paying the commission. But it's always been that way. Nothing's actually changing in who pays the commission. It's just being really clearly communicated at the beginning of the relationship instead of at the closing table. Does that make sense? So when we communicate how people get paid, happens differently. And I think that's really, really interesting. So the buyer is the one that pays the buyer broker. And that's what we have to establish. So August 17th is when successful buyers agents need to know their compensation up front. That's the big magic date right now, based on their agency agreement with their client. So when you sit down and sign the agreements, this is when it happens. How many of you have boards that have already taken away co-op compensation that's not showing it in your MLSs anymore? Christy, is that Dallas or is that Texas? All of Texas?
I think it's just Dallas, the 13 up here in this area.
Yeah. The associate I was with on today starts Monday, 8/1. Indiana requires buyer agency agreement signed by 7/1. But how many of them have taken the offer of compensation to the buyer completely off the MLS? Like it's no longer there. You can't show it. The DOJ saying things like you can't even use other sites to show it because all the agents were talking about you putting it on other sites like Zillow or your website or whatever to show buyer compensation. DOJ saying no statement of compensation is what we're looking for. They want zero compensation by the seller to be offered. They want it all to come from the buyer agreement for representing a buyer. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. So I can go through lots of details on the commission settlement. I think most of you know these things. Cooperative commissions can't be listed on the MLS. They want to make sure that there is no way to search for listings based on compensation being offered. You can't go in there and say, show me everything that's offering 2% or more, or 3% or more, or 1% or more. You cannot have that search capability in the MLSs. That's a big thing. And while there's still some MLSs not participating in it, you're going to find most across the country will be doing that. And it's about steering based on rates. Yeah, we don't want people to not see or show houses because they're not offering compensation. Buyer agreements will be required before showing properties. We know that. Brokerages and MLSs aren't included in the settlement, but a process is in place to allow for their inclusion if they buy into the settlement, so they can be included in the protection. So let's talk a little bit about building value in the services you provide and really selling the benefit. Everybody says this. You don't even know how many webinars I've been on and how many live events I've been to where the presenter says, you really got to learn how to sell your value. You got to be better at selling your value. If we really get good at selling our value, then we can get paid. But nobody says how. And like David Horsager, who wrote the book, The Trusted Leader, he always, whenever we talk about how we're going to implement something or do something together, he says, how. And he says it 50 times. Like, if you don't break down the how, and then you're just giving me features of things that I should do, but not teaching me how to do it, then we're leaving the client wanting. And I don't want to leave any of you wanting. So I'm going to give you some hows today. So how do we sell our value? What is that process? And the first thing I'm going to tell you is that we have to ask better questions. So number one, before saying, here's why to use me, how about I first understand what you want? Can we do a diagnosis? Where are you? What are your thinkings? What are the things that are keeping you from moving forward? What are the challenges you anticipate? What are the things that you definitely do or don't want in a new home? What about financing? We can talk about all those things. We uncover the client needs, and we do that by asking questions. And it's always the question after the question that makes more sense. And so with every response, it's the second or third question that gets you to go deeper into the real client need and the real client concern that helps you sell your value. We have to really sell the sizzle of what makes us different. And we do that by offering options and by giving options with each of those things that they talk about. Let me give you an example. When we go into a listing presentation, we have what's called, this is a listing action plan. And so we've got to create a folder. We got to get introduction of a checklist. We have to get it on the calendar. We have to add it to our call center. We have to prepare it for showings. We have to do an open house action plan. I have a list of 125 things we do when we get a new listing. When you go in a listing presentation, your ability to describe why each of these tasks are important to the seller is what has them go, oh, now I know why I'm paying you so much. We need the same thing for a buyer. So your buyer checklist, when you sit down with a buyer, is here's all the things we're going to do before you find a house. Here's all the things we're going to do while I'm showing you homes. And then here's all the things that are going to happen once you go under contract. And when the buyer sees all of those things that are action plans, that are action plan based, then they start to realize that's why you earn your money. Showing houses is this much of the transaction. It's all the work that happens when it goes under contract. It's the meeting of the inspector. It's going through the items that the inspector discovers and deciding whether or not they're negotiation levers. It's negotiating and renegotiating. It's making sure the lender has all their information for the pre-approval. Now that when people show up, there's no surprises at closing. And all of those things happen systematically with a plan. And that's what makes us unique as buyer's agents is we have a system for everything that's detailed and deep. And so when you show up and you're sharing the things, there's going to be all these new business models. Have you guys seen these guys? This company right here called Claire, this is the buy a home of your dreams without paying any commission with an automated agent, an AI assistant. Have you seen that one, Christy? Yeah, right? Introducing Claire, the world's first commission-free AI for real estate, revolutionizing the way you find your perfect home. Do you think that we can train an AI bot to ask the questions better to a buyer? Roberta, we absolutely can. If I could take everything you ask a buyer and I put it into a script and I have triggers that when you ask and answer this question, ask this question, the AI bot will find out what that client wants. Then it will go in and search all the properties on and off the market, and then we'll give them a list of properties to see. And then you can schedule a showing. AI is already doing it. And so I don't think that the artificial intelligence can replace the street smarts of a seasoned agent, because you have experienced things that AI can't experience in negotiations and finding properties and understanding neighborhoods and values and the dynamics that are the emotional things that people buy. But the getting inside a home and identifying the home you like, AI is changing the way we do business. And I think that this is just me. This is one of the interlopers. I think that you're going to see the Uberization of home showing. Imagine going as a buyer, pulling up in front of a home and having a map show up on your phone and says, connect with an agent that will show you this home. And all the agents in the neighborhood show up and their fee to show the home. And you say, do this one, it's 2 minutes out. And then you Uber it, they come in, they sign their single party agreement, you show them the home. If they want to make an offer or whatever, then you have a la carte services that agent gets, but they will be able to go and just Uberize the showing of a home. Zillow's already doing something similar to that. And so it's interesting to see what's happening. So the way you do business today is going to change. One thing I know for sure, if you want to get paid, own the listings. We can battle this buyer stuff and agree or disagree with Verl's thoughts on this. It doesn't matter to me, but I do know that if you own the listings, you're going to get paid. We can pretty much guarantee that. And so you know how you're going to get paid with the listings. So that's kind of interesting to think about it that way. So talking about buyer agency, let's just go through a little bit of talking points and how we talk about it. I love asking the question, have you heard about the new rules around agency entering homes? That's a great way to open up a conversation about compensation. And I want to get the coffee table, kitchen table conversation. I want to meet with people face to face. Oh my gosh, there's all these new rules and things around that. Once a time, I can sit down, I'll explain everything to you. You can look at what the options are and decide how you want to move forward. That's the conversation. Do you have a few minutes to discuss agency? We're now required to do that before you start looking at houses. Someone says, can you go show me a home? Say, yep, got to have a quick conversation with you about agency. Can we meet 15 minutes before we go look at houses? We'll get that handled. and make sure that we're in the right relationship. Like, it's okay to have that conversation early now. We're now required to have agency agreements before I can show you properties. Can I take a few minutes to help you understand what your options are? Because you have options and they have options. So those are great questions to practice role play over and over and over and over again, so that when you have quick conversations with someone that call inquire on a property, instead of just saying, I'll meet you at the property, say, yeah, let's get there a few minutes early. I want to discuss agency options before I get you into the house, then we'll get into it and go from there. Fair enough? So make it simple and easy. We also have buyer scripts in the class action advantage, which is we use our emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence in messaging. I'll give everybody a download for this, but we actually give you some ways of role playing through that. There's a system, things you need to know. There's scripts for working with sellers and scripts for working with buyers on going through and establishing agency and making sure you have that done. There's a bunch of different types of agency. The consumer, the real estate broker is not representing the consumer in a legal or agency capacity. That's kind of interesting. The client is the real estate broker is representing the client and acting as their legal agent in selling or leasing or buying a property. A transactional a realtor is a real estate broker that assists both parties in the real estate transaction, but doesn't enter into a client relationship with either one of them. That's like, oftentimes you hear that as dual agency or limited agency. A designated real estate agent is a different type of agency where the buyer and the real estate agent representing the seller both work for the same brokerage as the same firm. So we have a designated agency, and dual agency is what we talked about a second ago, which is both parties agree to have one agent represent them in the transaction. I think you're going to see less and less of that, unless the dual agency is a salary-based agent on the buy side of a transaction. And you're going to see more of that, where people that are listing heavy will have salaried agents open and show properties and have dual agency agreements and do flat fee for services based on, do you want to get in more houses, or what's the hourly rate we charge, or whatever. So you're going to see different types of things. It's getting more and more complex. This is Georgia's real estate understanding of real estate relationships and agency in Georgia. Every state has theirs. I encourage you to go pull yours and read through all the different types of agencies so you know what it is. There's all different kinds of buyer broker agreements. You can now, the new buyer agreements, you can have a per property, where I'm just going to charge you a fee per property we get in. You can have a weekly fee where I'm going to charge you I'll charge you weekly to go out and show you houses. I can have a fee where it's canceled upon written notice. We enter into it right now. We go look at properties. As soon as I'm adding, giving you value, then you use me. If not, you don't. Limited is where you get limited services and potentially lower fees. A full service is, I'm going to give you full services, and I could potentially charge you higher fees or performance-based fees. And then in a lot of markets outside of the United States, especially, you see non-exclusive agreements. You go into some markets outside of the United States, and they don't do any exclusive listings. You'll have 20 different listing broker signs in one yard. And whoever finds the buyer gets paid. But they're non-exclusive. Kind of interesting how you see that. The amount listed in the buyer broker agreement is the maximum a buyer broker can be compensated without amending the buyer broker agreement. And so when you do your buyer broker agreement and you put a fee in there, whether it's a flat fee, an hourly fee, or a commission, you can't go back and charge more later unless you amend that buyer agreement. And so it's really important that you don't leave it open, that you decide how you're going to get paid. You need to know going into a transaction how you're going to be compensated before you ever show that first property. So don't leave it open-ended. Let me give you some different compensation things. California Association of Realtors this week. Did you guys see this on the news? This was California Association's draft new buyer agreement. I want you to look at how complex it is. The DOJ said, nope, it's too complex. It's not clear for the buyer to understand how they get paid or who represents them, and there's too many variables in it. EXP did a draft buyer agreement. The DOJ said they liked this one because it's simple, it's clear, and you can see what you're going to do. So interesting, this or this. As a buyer, which one is more intimidating? Right? California is everybody here on the call from California? Because there's a new one this morning. So California is doing a whole new thing. They go to extremes on everything. It's nothing in the middle. It's all the way out. Everything's extreme. So I think it's really interesting when I look at these two things. So I'm going to encourage you to download both of these, look at them, and then compare to what you have, because DOJ said they like the EXP one and they don't like the CAR one. Go back to the drawing board. And they both have legal attorneys and people that are experts in this, and they're all listening to the same class action lawsuit stuff. And so it's interesting, the interpretation that comes from legal as to what the consumer has to sign. And they're saying they want it to be simple and clear. All right, so let's talk about some compensation options and some different ways of getting paid. Now, I'm throwing out some ideas, and I'm just throwing out ideas just to talk to you about it. And you could throw some back if you want to. So the home seller has agreed to pay the fee for my services, and we've negotiated that, and my fees will be taken care of at closing. And the buyer agreement, if you put that in there, you cannot not show property where the seller hasn't agreed to pay your buyer agent, and you're not going to know whether they have or not until you actually make the offer. And so that's going to become a less common way of communicating how you get paid. The home seller may incorporate a portion of their fees, and we've negotiated a fee for us, and whatever the seller doesn't want to contribute in the closing, you're going to have to make up the difference. And that's the fee that I'm offering. And so the buyer's going to have to make up the difference here. And if you don't and are not able to negotiate that, and I think that I believe that what's going to happen is that the seller offering any compensation is going to go away. And it's all going to be on you and the buyer's agent to figure it out. It's going to change the way we do mortgage and loans, and you'll still be able to add fees into the deal. But I think where we're headed is that it's gonna really change. Okay, Michael says, let's see what you said. Mike says, I've learned from an attorney that this is all being done by and backed, if not instigated by attorneys, to drive all the real estate business to attorneys, limiting the need for real estate agents. Interesting. Making us showing agents only and making attorneys close. A lot of states are already attorney states, and you have to have attorneys in every closing. And so, we're seeing some of that. So just kind of interesting. Home sellers that have not agreed to pay any buyer broker commission and are unwilling to negotiate is okay too. We have to discuss how I get paid for the services I provide. And there'll be a lot of sellers that do that. For me, as a listing agent, I'm looking at compensation and talking about it with the seller during the pricing discussion, anticipating that's going to come in as an offer that we're going to have to address at some point. And so do we address it now, or do we raise the price later, or do we address it as a marketing fee? So as a listing agent, I'm going to talk about the options of compensation and have a really clear discussion with a seller, so that there's no surprises coming in from buyers agents on trying to get paid as based on what they've done in their things. So have you ever thought about, if you were going to be creative as a buyer's agent, what you would charge hourly to show houses? What would you charge as your hourly rate? Anybody thought about that? Is there enough, Jessica?
Never.
Right. So but you got to put a number to it. So like, I don't know how soon I'm going to buy a house, but we got to have an agreement. And like, if I have no anticipation of getting paid in the end because you don't know you're going to buy, why don't we just do $1,000 retainer? I'm going to charge you 75 or $100 an hour, and we'll just use it when it's up. Then we'll stop showing houses, or we can increase it. What if you just charge an hourly rate? Or when it comes to settlement time, then that'll be put towards your 3% or 4% or 5% or whatever I charge at closing. And so you do a retainer, you get hourly compensated for the services you provide. Wouldn't that be cool? What if we stop giving away our services for free and we just charge an hourly rate? That's the second one, is a retainer. Like, let's just do a retainer against commissions. We've done this with sellers where the seller wants to overprice a property, and it's a high dollar property that's going to cost a lot for the agent to invest from a marketing perspective, and the agent doesn't believe it's going to sell. So we charge the seller a retainer that goes against the compensation to pay for marketing. And if the property doesn't sell, the seller's on the hook for it, not the agent. Having a retainer is a common way of dealing with fees. Isn't that what attorneys do? They charge you a retainer and you use it up. And then when you use it up, they say, yeah, you just got to put some more in the kitty because we've used it all up and you can't make a decision. It makes people a lot smarter when they go out showing houses if they're working against a retainer. The other thing that I really like is I love the idea of having variable-based compensation based on a menu of services. And so here's a menu of services that is 4, 5, and 6% commission of services, and you can choose whatever you want. And the more expensive is going to drive more people. It's going to give you access to more properties. Hey, you want me to knock on FSBOs and neighborhoods where the houses aren't for sale and go find you a house? I just charge more for that service. What if actually you're charging more to find a home in a limited inventory market? And if you bring an off-market property, there's a bonus to that. I like the lights go on, Christy. So like, just think about that. Like, this is what my regular fee is. We do as a retainer based. I'm going to go out and I'm going to spend extra hours finding you a property that's not on the market. If I do that, it's a $2,500 bonus because I'm going to bring you a property that I did through knocking on doors or finding something that wasn't on the market. Are you okay if I find you a property not on the market? You don't have to overpay for the property. You can decide what their offer is. And if I do that, then this is what the fee is. And we'll just come up with a fee that we both agree on. There's going to be lots of ways to actually earn more money. And I think it's really cool. So this gives us the ability to have these just amazing conversations around compensation. Ryan says, I've heard of agents wanting to charge listing agents for holding open houses. How do you answer that question? So in my low services fee, open houses aren't included. In my higher services fee, they are. If you want me to hold an open house and you're doing on a low fee, then we have a la carte open house fees for it. If buyers agents want to hold open houses for me, I'm not going to, like, I love that. So I don't know if that's the right question, Ryan. We'll have to ask that. What about paid for performance? Do you know that in the NBA, if you make it to the finals and you win the championship, you get a massive bonus? What if in a multiple offer situation you win, you get bonused? What if on the buy side, you're one of 50 offers, but you structure your offer so it gets purchased? There's a bonus for that. What if you get the property for less than it's on the market for, and you save your buyer a whole bunch of money outside of their approved amount? Could you get bonus for that? Is there ways to create variable compensation based on your performance? If I perform well, what if I only show you one house that goes under contract and I don't really have to work that hard? Would it be okay to make a little bit less on that property because the seller's doing some of the homework? I'm just saying that there's options out here. And if we're creative with it, I think that it opens up the door to new ways of getting compensated where we didn't get paid at all in the past. So what about performance-based listing commission? I think this is going to be interesting. Your house is worth $425. If I get you anything over $450, I'm going to charge you X% plus a bonus of the difference. If it sells for $400,000, I'm going to get my flat fee, and I'm not going to get anything more than that. If it comes in way less, I'm not going to get my fee. I'm going to get my fee minus an amount because I wasn't able to do the marketing to get your property at market value, and we didn't get the house in the right thing. What if you did performance-based commission? How many of you are open to that concept? Do you like that idea? Mike's thinking about it. Mike, you know that my mom used to do that pill roll right there. That's her high anxiety. When she was high anxiety, she would do that. Her therapist identified that as a pill roll. Interesting, isn't it? Because it changes the way we do. How long have you been doing business, Mike? You've been in this business for 20 minutes or longer?
34 years.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? Like it's
Oh, yeah.
a whole new way of thinking about it. And a lot of 25 and 30-year agents are having that emotion of, I don't know if I want to deal with all this crap. Like they're trying to decide what I want to do in the next 4 or 5 years. And how do I transition my business to something else? And it's okay, there's options out there. Multiple offer situations, are they worth more or less to you as a listing agent or a buyer's agent? Like if we get into a multiple offer situation, we're rolling up our sleeves. We're going to have to do things differently. And they're making it harder for us to get our offers to make them stand out. They don't want us to do letters. They don't want us to show you who the buyer is. They don't want to do anything other than have you do it based on numbers and being really intelligent in the conversation. So they're changing the way we do offers. So it's kind of interesting in how we develop relationships and make those things happen. What if an unrepresented buyer comes in when you're the listing agent? Can you charge a lot more for that? What if you doubled your fee if it's an unrepresented buyer? Because now you have to become and work both sides of the transaction and you have to really work a lot harder to make sure this thing closes. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm just saying, could you? All right. right, so let's celebrate the challenges that people are going to give us. Can you guys get excited about objections? What is an objection? It's a lot of work, Carla, when a buyer comes in unrepresented. I think it's I love working both sides of a transaction. You know why? Because I get to work with my favorite agent. And I know you laugh about that, but it really is true. How many of you, when you do a transaction, feel like you do both sides of it anyway, because the other agent on the other side of the transaction is such an idiot, like they have no idea what they're doing, and neither is their broker. Like you've done deals like that, and you just like, you know what? I remember having a conversation with an agent and basically said to them, you know, this is the highest priced property you've ever sold in your life. And if you want to earn any money on it, you're going to have to let me talk directly to your clients because you're screwing this up. And you're not going to make any money on it. I'm still going to sell the house, but it's not going to be to your buyers. So the only way this happens is if you introduce me to your buyers and we have intelligent conversations, because you're not doing the right thing for your client. And the agent was all butthurt about it and their ego got bruised, but they put me on the phone with their clients and we put the deal together and it closed. Last night I had a neighbor moving into a house that I'd sold 2 or 3 times. And now it was listed with a guy here locally in Salt Lake. And I went over, I saw the guy out in his garage. So I grabbed my gloves and I walked over and said, let me help you put some stuff away. I'm just helping a new neighbor move in. And this guy's a lender and he made 4 offers on the property. 3 of them were never responded to by the listing agent. 1.125 million. Brand, it's Kim's house. Can you believe that sold for 1.25? Anyway, the first time I sold that house, I sold it for 300,000. The second time, I think I sold it for 650. The third time, it sold for 1.25, and I didn't represent the buyer or the seller. So I missed out all. It was just interesting. He said the fourth time, he said, I called the agent because my agent had been submitting offers, and this guy's a lender. He says, I called the agent, who's a big team here in Salt Lake, and said, you know, I've submitted 3 offers. This is the 4th one. You haven't even responded with a counter. I got your offer, or go to hell. Like not a response at all. Do you not want to sell the house? And he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought my team was handling that. I don't know. Like there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of business. You wonder. One of the things we've implemented at Workman is we've created and we all share this. All the coaches share this with each other. Is we have an objection skill set journal. And I hope that if you don't have one of these, you need one. And every time you get an objection, whether it's around class action, whether it's around dual agency, whether it's around buyer compensation, showing compensation, a la carte services, listing fees, whatever, you should put the objection in here, the number of times you receive it in an appointment, how what you're using to handle the objection the first time. And if it didn't work, change it and do something different the second time and the third time, and whatever works, which one had success. And when we start documenting the objections and how we're handling and dealing with them, what happens is we start to get market intelligence. And so we know what's working and what's not working and what's resonating with the consumer. And we share this with each other. And so get involved with groups and networks and people that will share how the objection handling is happening. Is it helpful to you, Christy, to be in that network? Good answer. Yes, it is. All right, so keep an open mind. Okay, let's talk about learning how to build value for just a minute. So you've heard me say this a million times if you've ever been on a webinar with me, and that is anything you do 3 times, we create a system for it. And so if you're going to do 3 buyer presentations, working with a buyer to get a buyer agreement signed, you better have a system for it, and it needs to be automated. And so I'm just going to tell you that focus on listings, but if you're going to do buyers, it's okay. A couple of things you need to do to generate more income is work your database in a systematic way. In this working your database, this is a Verl thing that like Mike and Bill and Ryan, Vilya, Stacy, Jessica, all the people on my screen. If you just do this right now for the next 60 days, the rest of your year will be successful. And that is every day I want you to get up and I want you to go into your CRM and I want you to call 3 past clients and just get a feeling for what's going on in the marketplace. How are they doing? What can you do to serve them? Give them something of value. And I'm not talking about a jar of jam. I want you to have intelligent real estate conversations with 3 past clients or people in your database. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to prospect every day until you can add 2 new people to your database that will buy or sell in the next 24 months. Let's just add 2 new people every day. Like every day. You do that for 30 days, you have 60 people in your database. They're going to buy or sell. You do it the next month. Now you've got another 120. We want to add 2 new people a day. How hard is that if you're really going to work at it? 2 a day. And then I want you to learn one new thing, not just about industry changes, but about your technology and your systems. You all have tools, systems, and technology that are underutilized. You need to become power users of those tools before you go out and buy new things. So let's work that. So work your 3-2-1s. Can I give you that as a money-making activity? Roberta, will you actually do it? Yeah? Carla's in. Okay. We have a bunch of people on the call. I don't see how many people on our call. Awesome. Like 87 of you. Like make the commitment. Like everything in your life changes the day you start holding yourself accountable for the activities or the commitments you make. And so if you make the commitment, do it. The next thing is with all of your action plans, whether it's listings, closings, getting buyer agreements, create detailed action plans, because this is what you'll use to show and sell your value. Is you'll use those action plans that happen when you take a buyer on, when you take a listing on, when you go under contract and it blows the client away with all the services you provide. So create action plans for that. I wanted to share with you, I'm going to go and show you something else here real quick. Candace, give me a quick link to my home professional buyer's guide. I had it on a slide, but I must have deleted it by accident. Okay, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to show it to you. So we've got in and we change and update this all the time, but I'm going to give you guys all a copy of this. This is a copy of our buyer guide out of the RAMP program. Let's see what that looks like. And so basically it's a Google Slides. And so Christy, we've updated this. If you haven't seen this recently, we've changed some things to it. So with your buyer guide, when you do a buyer presentation, your buyer presentations today need to look more like listing presentations. You sit down at the countertop, you have a presentation. This is what I want you to go through. So let's get started. We talk about it. We give you the ability to fill it in. Here's the benefits of purchasing a home. Here's getting to know them. Your expertise is not the content in the slide. Your expertise is this one slide right here and being able to describe each of the 11 steps of buying a home and why you need an agent involved in each of the steps. Meeting with a realtor to establish agency is what we're doing today. Getting pre-approved. I'm going to walk you through that process and make sure that you actually are approved. And yes, I'm going to give you a copy. I'm going to give you a copy of the whole presentation, as well as the buyer presentation and a recording of the call. So, France, I'll give it all to you. Making an offer, what happens when we search for homes, getting the contract. Look, getting the contract executed is only 5. There's still 6 more steps that have to happen. And so we're going to go through all of these things. And each of these things in great detail are how we establish our value as a buyer's agent. Does that make sense? It's not, I'm going to show you houses and we're going to negotiate. It's each of the things in great detail. And then I introduce the team. We talk about the services we provide in great detail, what makes us unique. And then I go through each of the different things. Today's smart buyer would never buy a home alone. You never would. It's like going in unrepresented into a thing. So I'll give you a copy of this. We talk about the different types of agency in our states. And so that's going to be different. Established representation, getting pre-approval, what that really means. How do you choose your lender? And we give them a couple of options, but we make sure they have great lenders, especially today, because there's so many cool programs that are out there that allow buyers to come in and get lower level payments as if they're buying at a lower interest rate, even though rates are a little bit higher. But if you don't have a lender that understands all these options and knows how to give the client the right thing, you end up not doing deals. And lenders can kill deals or make deals for you. And so make sure you have good partnerships. We talk about the difference between a pre-qual letter and a pre-approval letter and why we want pre-approval. We want underwriting approval. When we go in to make an offer, we want the seller to know you can close. And there's not a bunch of outstanding contingencies on that. We talk about how much you can qualify for, what kind of fees, things to do when buying a home that you need to be available for, things to avoid when buying a home. And we're only on section 3. And I'm not going to go through all of these things with you. I just want to give it to you so you all have access to this, where you can go in and build your own or use mine as a template to create a buyer presentation. Is that helpful? Do you guys want a copy of that? That one slide with the 11 things should have 11 things that you go through, and your value is in the ability to explain each of those things in detail and why you are the best prepared to help them with that process. So here's what I'm going to give you today. I'm going to give you the listing presentation. Sorry, it's a buyer presentation template. That's a typo. The class action advantage shift module, the objection skill set journal blank that you can start tracking all of your things. And then I'll give you a new buyer listing plan. The action plan for, let's change this canvas to the buyer action plans and for buyer closings, not the listing one. You'll probably end up getting both because it's on the slide. So grab this QR code right here. And I've got about 5 minutes before I have to wrap up this call. Let me stop my share and just open up the call to any comments or questions or things you'd like to talk about that might be on your mind that we haven't addressed or discussed. What's going on in your heads that you'd like a little bit extra help with? And thank you for being here, everybody. This is a great call today. I love the engagement of everybody. We still have a great group on the call. What have I not talked about? Yeah, go, Jess. Can I call you Jess? I feel like we know each other.
Jess is fine. I have a question about open houses. So I've been hearing that like unrepresented buyers are not even allowed to be in the open houses. Is that right?
Yeah. So Brent, what's the latest on the DOJ opinions on that? Because Brent's doing all of our research and keeping us up to date on all of the things the Workman needs to know. Brent, what's the...
Well, I don't know exactly the answer to Jessica's question because she's specifically asking about an open house. We do know that the DOJ is requiring all buyers to be represented by a buyer's agent under contract before they can view a home. But I wonder if there's a loophole with an open house.
Mm-hmm.
An open house is just a little bit different because it's open and you
Right.
can just walk in right out of the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen an opinion on that.
I
So
thought that they could walk in, but there's like like during this open house, that's its own separate buyer agreement. Has anyone else heard that?
I have heard that now that you mention it, and that's a very logical answer. That could be exactly how it works.
You don't represent them, but they can view the home. That's what I'm hearing. And so people will be able to view a home, but they're unrepresented. And I think that it's going to require us to register people differently, and they have to disclose they're unrepresented and know there's no offer of compensation, and they don't want to come back and state they need to come back represented somehow. Buyers are going to be able to buy houses that don't have agents. You just, as an agent, can't show it.
Okay. Thank you.
Just like
Nor can they view it.
What's that, Brent?
Nor can they view it, and that's where the rub is they can't tour a home, perhaps with the exception of the open house. They can't tour a home without representation of an agent. That's assuming, of course, that the house is listed on the MLS.
Yeah, Jennifer, I love that you raised your hand. She says our legal team says that open houses are not required. However, if you speak with them about anything specific, you have to talk about agency at the time. I think that's there's going to be a lot of questions around this stuff, and we'll continue to get you answered. Like, well, I'm going to go dig for this. Love the question. Jennifer, did you raise your hand? Did you have a comment? Okay. Anybody else have a comment or a question? Love that. I love that question, Jessica. Thank you for thinking about it. Jennifer says, that was my comment. I raised my hand and I posted it in chat. Good job. Okay, good stuff. Here's what I know. I know that in this market, in this skills-based market, we have the opportunity to change the perception of the value of the realtor in the eyes of the consumer by simply being better. And I challenge all of you to learn more about your market, study the trends, understand what's happening in communities, where development is happening, where redevelopment is happening, how the community is addressing the limited inventory. There's going to be so many new opportunities that come up by rezoning and restructuring and repurposing properties that if you're not aware of what's going on, you're going to be left in the dark. But if you're at the forefront of what's going on and you participate in the meetings and you get involved, you'll become an expert that has great value to both buyers and sellers. So I challenge you to do that. Just get into it. Get into this business. It's your career. You've chosen real estate as a career. It's time to be experts in it. And as you do that, you'll create lots of opportunities. And then last but not least, if you don't have a Workman coach, as someone who's looking at your business from a different perspective, can I encourage you to do a coaching consultation? Get on the phone with us. We're helping so many people right now just change the way they look at the business and structure things differently, and they're having great success. So I believe that greatness is predictable, and so is average. And if you're getting an average result, my guess is we could probably look at the things you focus on and tell you why you're getting an average result and make course corrections and help you take it to a different stratosphere. So join the family. We'd love to have you. Thanks for being here today, everybody. Appreciate you being on the call, and I'll talk to you on our next Workman Success webinar. Bye, everyone.